Yes. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you, some familiar faces, some good friends and new friends. Welcome to this panel on the role of technology on protecting the rainforests and powering environmental investigations. My name is Gustavo Faleiros. I'm the Director of Environmental Investigations at the Pulitzer Center. So the Pulitzer Center has been working with all these journalists and government and technologists for supporting good quality journalists, but also engagement and activities with different audiences all around the world. We do this with grants and fellowships, as I said, also like engagement activities as in universities, schools, and communities. So we have today here a wonderful panel, a very diverse panel, multidisciplinary group of speakers. And I hope from this panel you get a lot of insights about using data, methodologies, and research to power these investigations and also to get to know more how to protect the environment. The way I hope this is going to work, we'll have case studies from Venezuela and Brazil, but these insights, certainly, I'm pretty certain, will help you also to think how to use these methodologies and tools in your own work, independent on which country or region. Let me just quickly say who are here with us, and then when we do the presentations, I'll give more details. So as soon as I finish these introductions, I'll invite the State Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Norwegian government, Björk Sanger, to do us opening remarks. And then we have a presentation from Maria de Los Angeles from Venezuela. I'll tell more about her. And Lili Mendonça from Brazil. And Edward Boida from the US and Norway. So a quick introduction. In this panel, as you could see in the title, we emphasizing the importance of using technology, tools, and methodologies in rainforests. And why rainforests? I'm very happy that you are all here and giving your attention to this issue. But as you probably know, rainforests are key for, like the planet's balance. As now we are correctly saying, the rainforests are not the lungs of the earth. I know some journalists still use this because it's a catchy way of saying, but forests are actually much more than that. Forests are the air conditioning of the earth. They are the rainmakers of the earth. And they, besides all the climate services that they do, they also provide invaluable environmental services for us. I just can mention some of this, like the food security for several nations, or even the control of plagues and diseases, like we have a lot of these discussions about the control of diseases during the COVID crisis. But the other reason, and not less important, why we are here talking about rainforests is because these rainforests, I should say, they are the machine rooms of our global economy. Really, they are the center, at the center of this sophisticated global economy that we have. So if you think of any commodity that we consume these days, I put it here, wood, coffee, soy, beef, palm oil, cocoa, and then gold, nickel, manganese, coltan, and now an incredible number of rare minerals. They are all sourced and extracted from the rainforest regions of the world. And as we did some investigations, even poor monkeys that are massively exported to the US, Canada, Germany, and the UK for pharmaceutical purposes are sourced from rainforests. So as you can see, we are linked and totally dependent on these supply chains. So the challenge for us as journalists and NGO and government and intergovernment bodies is how you make sense of this complexity of such a sophisticated global economy with the actually most corrupt and brutal practices that are happening on the ground. That's the reality. That supply chain comes with deforestation, invasion of indigenous land, killing of environmental defenders, pollutions of water, and I can go on and on. So here's where technology comes to rescue us, because this is a large-scale problem, and to deal with this complexity, we really need to look at the problem at several resolutions. I would like to say that when you combine the ground resolution, which journalists are very good at, like doing interviews, going to the ground, with the kind of a higher resolution to get the big picture, the satellite imagery, and the data, you actually get to deal with this complexity. So that's why we're talking about technology here. And the work that you will see here today from Ed, from Maria, and from Lily are part of a very great initiative that I have the honor to coordinate that is called the Rainforest Investigations Network, that we gladly got the support from the Norwegian International Climate and Forest Initiative, NICFI, and the aid of NORAD, and that allow us to create a network that collaborates. These are journalists in the Amazon, the Congo Basin, and Southeast Asia, that collaborate to investigate the root causes of the destruction and the supply chains. And that's the other part that is linked to the complexity. So the only way of dealing with the complexity and the scale of this problem is collaborating. The same mining company that's acting in Indonesia is actually a Brazilian company. Look at that. So the same palm oil company that is working in Colombia is also in Congo. So it is a global economy, as we know, and journalists working globally, collaborating, can deal with this complexity. So I'll invite George now to give us our opening remarks, and then we'll have these presentations. Welcome again, and thanks for coming, and let's have a great session. George, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Gustavo, and thank you for setting the scene so well for why we are here. I thought I would start by talking about truth, which that we know right now is under pressure with the intense and constant bombardment of information digitally, both true and false, which has altered our perception of reality. And for some, that digital space has turned into a toxic space of polarized messages and lies. And in that turbulent space, surely we can all use some guidance. And that's why free and independent journalism, such as we have represented on the panel and look forward to hearing from later today, is more important than ever. Now, the media, or the fourth estate, has always been tasked with following the money, exposing wrongdoing and crime, and holding the powerful accountable. That does not come for free, and I think it's also alarming now when we are learning that the media's income from advertising, which has been a traditional important source of income, has gradually withered in parallel with the growth of big tech. And that's one of the reasons why Norway supports the Pulitzer Center, like we just heard here in the introduction, and other partners, such as ICIJ and the Thomson Reuters Foundation, because we would like to strengthen independent journalism and ensure that the media can focus on some of the most important issues of our time, such as the climate and nature crisis, environmental crime, corruption, and illicit financial flows. The Pulitzer Center is making valuable contributions by highlighting the challenges and opportunities that artificial intelligence, or AI, presents for journalism by providing examples of how technology enables more efficient ways of analyzing and collecting information and then connecting the dots. Because, of course, technology can provide that digital information and the toxic space that I talked about, but there are also opportunities. Investigative journalism plays that crucial role in creating awareness and debate about mechanisms enabling environmental crime, as well as uncovering linkages to corruption, illicit financial flows, and criminal networks. So shedding light on these issues and connecting the dots across sectors and across borders are essential for transparency and accountability. So I thought before I leave the stage to the great panel that we have here, I thought I would briefly share the story of Norway's International Climate and Forest Initiative, known as NICFI, and the use of satellites and machine learning within that effort. Now, the satellites can provide comprehensive real-time surveillance capabilities, allowing governments, but also civil society, researchers and journalists to monitor vast and remote areas of the rainforest that are otherwise inaccessible. Those satellite images and data provide crucial knowledge on deforestation, on changes in land use, on environmental degradation, providing a bird's eye view of illegal activities and natural loss. Norway's International Climate and Forest Initiative is one of our most important international endeavors to mitigate climate change and nature loss by protecting the world's rainforests. An important part of NICFI is that program, which provides public access to high-resolution satellite images. Since that program's launch in 2020, more than 20,000 registered users worldwide have used that free, high-resolution imagery of the tropics. Feedback from governments, but also from civil society, from private sector, and other users is already telling us how this is a game changer when it comes to understanding and responding to deforestation in these parts of the world. The NICFI satellite data program has registered users from more than 158 countries, using data from 97 tropical countries. And many more are accessing the data through other platforms such as Google Earth and the Global Forest Watch. The goal is to support journalists that need satellite imagery and other relevant data to gather evidence and document illegal logging, mining, and other activities that contribute to deforestation. I was involved a little bit in this about 15 years ago when those images were decoded and read manually. Where we are now with machine learning that can represent that paradigm shift in data analytics, enabling systems to learn from and make predictions based on large data sets. It's a massive shift in enabling processing of data and really seeing developments over time. So that transformative approach allows for a much more accurate and efficient analysis. We can uncover insights and patterns that were previously unattainable with those more manual methods when we would eyeball the images that we got. So by leveraging those high quality satellite data in combination with machine learning, with governments and civil society can predict potential hotspots of illegal activities, enabling preemptive reporting and counteraction. So to wrap up, ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to partner with organizations and initiatives that leverage these technologies to protect the rainforests, to combat illegal activities. The world needs your eyes and ears on the ground, not only in war zones, but also in the dark alleys of our economies. So with that, I thank you, and I look forward to listening to the discussion. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Björk. Okay, thank you again. We'll start with the core part, with the presentations. I'll invite Maria de los Angeles to talk about the case of Venezuela. So Maria was a former member of this community of the Rainforest Investigations Network that I told you, but also she has a long experience as a reporter and an editor right there in the Amazon of Venezuela. She was the editor for many years of a great publication called Correo del Caroni, which a lot of us had the honor to collaborate. She's now coordinating the journalism school of the Universidad Católica Andrés Bello, which is in Puerto Ordaz, ¿cierto? Yes. Which is a great journalism school, again, in that part of Venezuela. So, Maria, tell us about your work investigating illegal mines in the Venezuelan Amazon.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for joining us. I want to speak briefly about my experience in the Venezuelan Amazon. as Gustavo said, I live in the Amazon. I was born there and I grew up there. I have been working for 18 years in the Amazon, first in the local newspaper, the main reference in Venezuela, Correo del Caroní, and then with another media's national and international outlets. In the last 2 years, I was a fellow of the Rainforest Investigations Network, and now I am a professor. I am the director of the communication school of the local university. So let's talk about Venezuela and what's happening there. Venezuela is a mega diverse country. It is in the top 10 of the greatest diversity of species. We have endemic species that you can't find in another place in the world. As I said, Venezuela is also part of the Amazon. It represents almost half of the national territory. And you can find incredible and spectacular places like these ones, the Angel Falls, or these top flat mountains called the Puis. These are really spectacular, and I suggest that you go there at least once in your life, but there are so many red flags when you talk about what is happening in Venezuela, and this is one of those red flags. The mining activity is increasing, the corruption is fueling the environmental damage in the Venezuelan Amazon, and this situation is also fueling the criminal activity and the violation of human rights. Some panelists said these days at the conference that they are seeing progress and steps towards transparency in the world, but that's not the case of Venezuela. In the case of Venezuela, we have systemic corruption, military complicity, smuggling, illicit economies, change of traditional economic activities, and no transparency at all. So this was the context when we thought about this investigation. And yeah, we have to find a solution to this situation. So my friend and colleague Joseph Polisuk, who is here and who led this project, thought in a solution, because imagine for 1 second that you are in the middle of nowhere, that you are in the middle of the jungle, you have not resources to go to another points, or you don't know where are the mining points or how many mining points are there. So we made this project called Corredor Furtivo, or Secret Corridors in English. This project was an alliance between the Venezuelan media Armando.info, which is like building info, the Spanish newspaper El País, and the Rainforest Investigations Network. We did 6 stories on this project. And yes, we wanted to build the most updated map of mining points and airstrips at the south of Venezuela. So we did an alliance, we made an alliance with Earth Genome. Edward is going to talk about the technical details of this method, but in general, Earth Genome produced or programmed an algorithm that allows us to see what was happening at the south of Venezuela. From satellite images, the algorithm produced a database with coordinates that we checked manually point by point, because this technology can give us false positives, so we had to verify point by point. So the findings were really incredible. We found 42 airstrips at the south of Venezuela and more than 3,000 mining points in Amazonas and Bolivar states. So take a look of this video. You can see here all the mining points and all the airstrips that were near these mining points. Okay, maybe you can see it a little. So the red points or the red squares are mining points, and the circles are the airstrips. Okay, so besides the artificial intelligence, we also created some database like this one. This is a crime database with all the crimes at the south of Venezuela. And we also made this map of the criminal ecosystem. You can see at the east, these so-called syndicates. They are local criminal groups. In the middle, you can see the garimpeiros, which are miners from Brazil. And at the west, you can see the guerrillas, or these criminal groups coming from Colombia. Then we finally went to the field, we went to the ground, and both the artificial intelligence and the database allowed us to pick or to choose all the points that we visited on the ground. So this was, yes, we use these techniques, artificial intelligence, databases, and traditional field work. I think that we couldn't do this project just only with artificial intelligence or just only with databases. We have to combine and mix all these techniques to get a better work. And yes, combining these techniques, we had more findings like these ones: slavery of the Sanema indigenous people in the Alto Orinoco. This is located at the south of Amazonas state. Also recruitment of indigenous people, creation of indigenous guards in order to defend their territory, and massive violence, okay? There are 7 active criminal groups at the south of Venezuela, and this is massive violence. Okay, when we talk about impact, we are not used to have impact in Venezuela because of the government, beyond the fact that the people find out about these problems through our work. But after we published this investigation, the military guard explored some airstrips at the south of Venezuela. This was an inconsistent operation because it took between 2 or 3 months, and then they disappear as usual in terms of control. This project also brought us the opportunity to keep investigating, and 1 year later we published this investigation, The Lords of the Gold. This was really fun also. It was really interesting because we used also satellite images. We created another databases with companies and people who extract the gold from Venezuela and take it to other countries like Brazil and La India. We use satellite images from Earth Genome, and if you want to read more about these investigations, you can scan these QR codes. I'm gonna give you 5 seconds. Okay, and finally, I want to share some platforms for satellite monitoring. In the first place, Global Mining Watch, and the other ones that are useful, friendly, and easy to use: Google Earth Pro, EO Browser, NASA Worldview, Planet, and Global Forest Watch. Thank you so much, and I'm here for comments or questions.
Thank you, Maria. I'll pass it on to Edward soon, but I just want to emphasize something that I always emphasize you will see in this work. So again, to make such a work of scale, you see that you have like these 3 elements. You have like the ground reporting, very well done, safely done. We can maybe discuss a little bit this when we have the time for the analysis. I'm pretty sure some of you might be asking, like, how can you go to these places safely? So we can have some protocols and having ways of tracking the journalists on the ground. So, but the on-the-ground reporting done responsibly, together with the data part that we will hear more now from Edward, and the partnerships and collaboration makes this work happen. So there was the collaboration among outlets. We saw like the Venezuelan outlet Armando Info working with El País in Spain, you know. But we have also this multidisciplinary collaboration between a group of scientists or data scientists with journalists, and finally we have the on the ground. So I tend to repeat, so as I see some familiar faces, sorry for bringing this again, but for us it's like this really three pillars, like on the ground reporting, collaboration, and data makes us able to deal with the complexity of what is happening now in the rainforest and doing the good environmental investigations. Let's hear from Edward. Here's the tricky part of this panel, because he never wants to say what he actually does. He's like, say like, well, I'm a physicist, but I'm not a data scientist. It's difficult to introduce him. But yesterday we settled, he's a friend of a journalist. That's his role, a good friend of journalists, right, Ed? That's what you do. But Ed is officially the data scientist of Earth Genome, this great NGO founded in Berkeley in the US by really insightful a group of young professionals to help journalists, activists to use technology, geospatial analysis when combating environmental destruction and other human rights abuses. Great work. You can see they helping Reuters, Bloomberg, so many great outlets have been working with Earth Genome. So we are very glad to have their support to develop this algorithm that not only powered the work in Venezuela, but we have another great collaboration in Brazil that was the front page of New York Times, identifying airstrips, and these are the guys behind it. So tell us how you do it. Earth Genome.
Earth Genome. Like genome, yeah. Thank you, Gustavo. So I until 2018, I was a physicist, but working with Earth observation, remote sensing, data, and wanting to do work that really had obvious impact in the world, an immediate impact, and what better way to do that than to partner with and support the work of journalists working in places that they know well, and where the local environmental issues, environmental crime ties into this global story of and global challenge that we faced of climate change and degradation of ecosystems. Starting with some pictures here of scars from illegal mining. A lot of this I'm going to talk about mining, but I'm also going to zoom out to a bigger context here. This is an incredibly noxious, destructive activity, and what you see here is just the green in these pictures is the intact rainforest, and then as part of this process, the trees are chopped down, the water is pumped through the underlying soils to release the minerals. Mercury, which is toxic, is mixed in and then burned off because it gloms on with the gold, and you're left with this toxic wastewater sludge where you used to have rainforest. I'm very happy that you got to hear from Maria first, because I think that, for me, the question always with technology is, what good is it? How is it being useful? And there's been a lot of promise and and hope around the potential that could be around machine learning / artificial intelligence, and in particular now I'm talking about use of those tools with satellite imagery and remote sensing. But what good is it now, and what can we do with this concretely? So that's really what I want to talk about today. And so you've seen some of the uses. I'm here to talk about the techniques. That's nice. That's something that's easy for me to talk about. This is my daily work. So, but, and I'm gonna, because I have been working on this illegal mining problem, particularly since 2019. This investigation that Maria was involved in and that we're highlighting here was really a turning point where we moved from that sort of use of eyeballs looking at satellite imagery to machine learning, and then have grown from out of this work in Venezuela to look at it, apply machine learning throughout the Amazon basin to look at this problem. So why satellite imagery, first of all? Like, what good is it? Why is it important in investigating environmental crime? I mean, there are a few just really concrete things that it can bring. And I think first and foremost, it provides access, a mode of access into places that are hard to reach or dangerous. And so that was, I think, a key piece of its role in this investigation, was just helping the journalists decide where they needed to report and to make plans to do that safely. It also provides a long-term record and an evidentiary record of what has unfolded on the surface of the planet. And then finally, if you want to think about doing things at bigger scale, like the scale of say, the Venezuelan Amazon, it can be helpful to use these large data sources and machines to sift through them for insights. So I'm going to take you a little bit on my personal journey with this topic. In 2019, I was doing some other work for an advocacy group called Survival International, and they asked me if I could see the mines in Yanomami indigenous territory in northern Brazil. They had heard from their contacts that there was a new uptick of mining. There had been a previous gold rush in Yanomami territory that, in the 80s and early 90s that caused the death of many Yanomami people, and so there's real concern around this. So this is not just an environmental problem, but a real human rights problem, disproportionately impacting indigenous people in the Amazon basin. And this image here is one that I kept on my desktop on my computer for a number of years, just to sort of remind me of why I was doing the work I was doing, my motivation. And this is Yanomami people coming together to sort of project a message to the outside world, like a request for intervention to stop mining. They've spelled out Fora Garimpo, which basically means mining out. Like help us get the miners out of our land. And so when asked to do this, I went to almost always I start in Google Earth when I start a project. It's a great resource most of the time. Here it was not. This is a picture of the Mucujay River Basin in Yanomami territory. This is just what I saw yesterday as I was preparing this talk on Google Earth, and you see absolutely no signs of mining. And when I started this 5 years ago, I looked really hard, and I had to report back, I cannot find the mines. I don't know what's happening. Why I can't, because the reports were like upwards of 20,000 miners active in the area. I've shown you the pictures of these mine scars. Like, this is something we should be able to see. But it turns out that it's very cloudy in the rainforest, surprise, surprise, and the imagery on Google Earth is dated by about a decade in this case. So the mines are not there to see. This is a picture of Amazon Mining Watch. This project has evolved into this platform to monitor mining throughout the Amazon basin. And this is our data from 2019 over imagery, a different image source from 2019, where you can see clearly that already at that time there intense mining activity along the Mucujay River. So I guess the reason I've said this cautionary tale and talking about technique and tools here, actually, I should go back to, there was this graph on this initial slide that I put up here of the growth in Earth observing satellites. This is sort of one fact that makes this work possible. You see, it's a little hard to read there, but the y-axis there goes up to about 500 satellites, and this is split out by countries or broader jurisdictions. I think the EU is lumped together here. But so which is to say that there are hundreds of satellites up now observing the Earth, and each with different properties and different advantages and disadvantages, and one needs to do this work carefully to be aware, at very least, of those sort of advantages and disadvantages, and bring many of them to bear. And so, and I will show you in the course of this talk a number of satellite image sources that are relevant for this work. So, and it turns out that for us doing this with machine learning, and one of the more valuable sources has been Sentinel-2 imagery from the European Space Agency. It's an open source data product. It's multispectral. It's modest in its spatial resolution. A pixel is about 10 meters across, so it's good for seeing things on the scale of landscapes. Not good for seeing automobiles, for instance. Those would be totally blurred out. But critically, it's collected every 5 to 6 days, and what that means is that, in particular, you have many views in the course of a year over a place that can be cloudy, and then do some, we'll call it mosaicing techniques, but basically find the cloud-free pixels that as they appear over the course of a year, and get a picture of what's happening on the land below. And so that's what we're using is one of our main sources of imagery. And another nice thing to know about this, if you're interested in using satellite imagery in your own work, is that EO browser, which we already mentioned, is probably, after Google Earth, the most user-friendly platform you can go to access satellite imagery. It has a pretty intuitive interface, which is shown here. You zoom to a location and then hit a search button, and it will show you available scenes to select from. So, in that early work, I was sifting through satellite imagery once we figured out this problem with getting the right image source, sifting through it by hand or by eye. Eventually we had some high school students helping us look for mines in satellite imagery because there was so much of it. And we reported in a dozen cases, specific locations around the Amazon basin where specific manifestations of the mining and impacts on people in the communities around there. And the folks from Armando Info approached us and asked us if we could do this sort of more broad-based survey, and we really had to think about, they asked us, can you do this with machine learning? They knew that was something that we did at Earth Genome, and we thought about it and agreed to try. And so this for us was a turning point in our development as an organization, and like really bringing machine learning to bear in concrete ways, and I'll show you where that's sort of going soon and on into the future. But for this project, we built what is called a convolutional neural network. It's a neural network basically it's a mathematical statistical model. It's a big mathematical statistical model with many free parameters that need to be trained and the way that we do this in practice, the way we build this, is first we have to collect examples. And basically we don't try to coach the machine in very many ways. We create this mathematical scaffolding that where it can store its information, but basically then we provide examples, and it figures out how to tease, in this case, mines apart from everything else on the landscape. And so we do that. We have to find examples, and in our case, and part of the reason I take you on this like sort of longer term journey is that we could not have done this machine learning without having done this prior reporting work because we needed to know where a lot of mines were to get started and what they looked like, and have that sort of knowledge base before we could begin to train a machine to do this. We had to be able to do it as humans. So that's the first part. Then once you have those locations, then you build some coding tools to download the imagery. Currently we're using Google Earth Engine to do this. They've recently made it easier and for us to interface with that system. So around each of these locations, we grab some imagery. Those become the examples. We feed those into this training algorithm for the neural network. And eventually it learns a mathematical model of what is a mine and what is not a mine. And then when you feed it subsequent examples of imagery, it can tell you yes or no, or give you some probabilistic yes or no about whether it is or is not a mine. This is a little hard to read, but I wanted to just to demystify this a little bit, to give you a sense of, like, when I say collect examples, what that looks like. And so this is our data set that went into Amazon Mining Watch, the latest training runs. And so what you see here, these are points on a map of the Amazon basin. The yellow ones, or the gold-colored ones, are the positive examples, the examples where we have flagged identified mines. Again, this is like built up over years of sort of understanding of where mining is happening, and then we can go in and put points on a map. And then all the other colors are various runs of collecting negative samples, things that are not mines, and we did this iteratively. So this is not a good sampling of the Amazon basin and like the vast array of terrains that are there. It's not all rainforest. It's also rainforest that's been converted into ranches, and it's badlands, like dry bare earth, and it's rivers, and it's a huge varied terrain, and we have to essentially, ideally capture all of that so that the machine can know what is not a mine, and needs really a comprehensive set of examples. But in this case, we have done it sort of like we call it bootstrapping, bit by bit. We collect a bunch of negative data. You can see it concentrated up in Venezuela and the Amazon there. That's because that's where we began this work. And had the most data, and then we try to extend the models and run on bigger areas, and we find out, oh no, it's turning up things that are not mines, and that's because it has never seen like these dry banks of a river before, and so we have to add those to our negative training data set, and then we run it again, and we find some other thing pop up, like a landslide or an aquaculture pond that we've never seen before, and we add those to the negative training data set, and eventually you start to get a collection of data that expresses what's not a mine throughout the basin, and then you can use that to build models. And this is what this looks like today. Amazon Mining Watch gives an overview picture of mining, this open pit gold mining activity in the Amazon basin. And you notice, like, so first of all, what can you see in this picture? It touches every country in the Amazon basin. Our estimate of impacted area is about 3 million acres, which is enormous. We're making detections on patches of imagery, not on like the detailed contours of the mine footprints. So that's measuring those patches, which come in about 20 hectare chunks, sorry. But it's a huge amount of land impacted. Something like 7,000 distinct mines or mine areas are identified in this picture, and you can see sort of at the top of the screen, just huge minefields in those. That's the Guyana, and then Venezuela, Bolivar, and Amazonas state, which are the subject of this reporting. And this data, these are later models that I'm showing you. In fact, ones that we just trained this year. But the data in Venezuela is essentially, what we used in this reporting. So, and just here are a few examples. We have gone on to continue to report on this and various locales in Amazonia, taking this big picture as leads to further investigation. So here's an example looking at sort of the spread of mining deeper into Yanomami territory, and this picture that you see here is the overrunning of an indigenous village by these big mine complexes. And here are a few other headlines, including the one from El País was from our work. So another, how am I for time here? Am I good? 5 minutes maybe?
Yeah, 5. Not much more.
What's that?
That like the 40 there.
Yeah, okay. So another piece of this was finding the illegal airfields, which are an important part of the infrastructure for the mining, where miners and supplies are brought in, gold is smuggled out. To identify these airfields, there's some open data that we can begin with. OpenStreetMap is a collaborative mapping project, and you can actually scrape it. They don't make it so easy, but now there's tools like ChatGPT, and you can ask it, like, I want to find airfields in Venezuela, and it will tell you what you need to type in to overpass Turbo to get a map of all the airfields that are known on OpenStreetMap. But also, we wanted to go beyond that open data and find airfield, the additional airfields that we knew were tied to the mining fields in particular. And the way that we did that was we used the machine detections, which are in yellow in this map. The red points, a little bit hard to see, are those OpenStreetMap data points. And then essentially, like in this case, we followed the mines, the data that we had on the mines, and then using eyeballs looking for airfields. And this is a picture of what that looks like. So you see at the bottom of the screen a couple of mines that have been detected. The airstrip is kind of top center in the image. I've drawn a sort of a segment to measure the length. That's one sort of corroborating feature that we can use to make sure that it's an airfield. But these, once you get used to it, they're pretty obvious. They're long dirt strips that are nicely manicured or cleared of vegetation. And in this case, you can actually see the paths leading from the airstrip to the minefields. And so we went systematically through along the paths of the mines looking for these airstrips, and that's how we built the airstrip data set. So this is where this is going, or where we see this work going. And I'm very excited about this trend because I think this is finally going to deliver on a lot of the promise of AI making this work easy. The models we built for the Venezuela work first were months of effort building, extending those to the Amazon basin, again, months of effort. And they're custom models that detect mines only. That's what they do. And they're good at that, but they're limited also to that specific problem. But along with the trend in large language models for text, there's a trend to what we call foundation models for satellite imagery or remote sensing data, where there are groups training very large models unsupervised, without labeled data, but that can learn good semantic representations of the types of objects that are on the surface of the planet. It might input 500 gigabytes of Sentinel-2 satellite imagery. And then those models are being open sourced, and we are trying to leverage those with a little bit of additional info, a little bit of training data, maybe as few as 1, 2, 3 examples. They can quickly start returning information about mines, also airstrips, also new road construction, other forest loss. So these are a much more versatile tool, and one that can be almost used on the fly. So this is a quick scroll through a GitHub page that's assembled all of these foundation models for satellite imagery that people are working on. This is in the last year that this is happening, basically. Just the computational power and the modeling has come to the point that this is newly possible. And what we're doing at Earth Genome with this is basically we're trying to demonstrate use cases, show how this can be useful, and then build a user interface that maybe data savvy users, but not those who don't have machine learning expertise per se, can use to do this kind of investigative work. And so what you're seeing here is a demonstration of this new tool we're calling Earth Index. It's this user interface on top of an open source foundation model for satellite imagery, finding solar panels in Cambodia. And what you want to observe here is, again, sort of, at the beginning you'll see a few points labeled in blue, and then we hit a button that says find predictions, and then in real time it comes back with the rest of the solar field there and then elsewhere in the country. So we right now are using this to find, well, I gave these examples already. I could add also industrial agriculture facilities, sprawling industrial mines. It's really quite a versatile tool. And so we're very excited about the potential for this and working to get it in the hands of data journalists and other NGO researchers working on advocacy around these same problems to support their research. And just to bring closure here, I'm demonstrating a search for mining in Yanomami territory and discovering or revealing the spread of these mines. One of the big trends that's happening there is the garimpeiros, the miners from Brazil, pushing up and across the border into Venezuela now. And opening previously untouched parts of the Amazon basin. So I'll stop there. And happy to take questions later.
Thank you so much, Ed. And as Ed, we have so much excitement for this new work, because this is exactly what we were saying. Like, it's an issue of scale, and as Björg also said, like, now we don't need just look at the satellite imagery. It can really scale up and deal with this problem, which is with large scale. So what I want to emphasize, besides all the amazing things that you show us, is like this partnerships between, I would say, journalists, but think about communities as well. These journalists, these communities are kind of the ground validators, the people that bring the examples, as you said, and allow this suddenly to get a much bigger impact, because you have then the technology coming and helping that to become, like a broader picture. We also see this as, like the capacity that we're creating among journalists and activists of seeing the entire, from the ground to the soil, like that you bring the big picture to the example. And as you were doing in your work, like going from the Amazon to the Yanomami case, we do as a journalist as well. We do like from the bottom up. We get the Yanomami case from the ground, and then we get the context and how this is affecting the entire Amazon. Unfortunately, as you can see, it's affecting a lot. We'll do something a bit different from the other panels. I'll stop here for maybe 5, maybe 10 minutes and ask you, as this is a workshop, instead of you asking us, I'm going to ask you, how do you see this being applied in your work? Not necessarily in the Amazon or the Congo Basin. Then we're going to jump to Lily. Lily will bring another element, another angle, which is the corporate research. How we get information from corporate databases, which are pretty great with the open data, also with a lot of scale of access, and get to also expose some very important cases of the supply chain. And we have time for that. But how about you tell us how this is useful for your work? And you can ask questions, of course, but I would like to also understand if this is useful. Please introduce yourself.
Achu. It's Achu, right? Okay, good morning. My name is Jason Lee. I am Taiwanese American, and I'm actually a biomedical engineer based in Los Angeles. The job that makes money for me is doing early stage investment in biotech companies, startups. So basically angel investors and VC. Glad to see another Californian doing some work for the greater goods of for the earth. I think, data processing and data analyzing is essential in our industry. In every industry now, since AI is in every industry, it's the third industrial revolution, basically. And hopefully, with good regulations from governments and from everybody, it will, like last industrial revolution, create more space and time for people to develop their time and energy to something more meaningful than just chasing after money. But back to, so that's my thing, AI or data processing and analyzing really impactful. And I think it's also, a clear image is worth 1,000 words in public articles to the general public, right? Other than researcher, of course, we use lots of data to analyze, but clear graphics, like what you're doing, I think is very impactful, especially you involving high school students. That, because they're the future. If they, side notes, Bay Area changed a lot. I was born and raised in Taiwan, and then I finished my public education to high school in Taiwan. Then I got accepted to University of Southern California in LA, major in biomedical engineering, minor in architecture, and then I also, years later, after worked in the biotech industry for a while, too boring, and then I went, sorry, and then I went to IE Business School in Madrid, Spain for my MBA, and afterwards I worked for myself. But my question back to you is, because one of my major interests when I went to IE Business School is sustainable entrepreneurship and social/impact investments. Looking at your project, are you self-sustainable for this project, or you are mostly relied on donations and volunteering? And add on to that questions, how do you see yourself, because what you're doing is definitely impactful and meaningful, and with a scientific background, sorry, I haven't finished, very soon. How, because in LA we have RAND corporations. Do you have such corporations that help you to do more projects? Since I'm from Taiwan originally, in like Asia Pacific area, I see you do Cambodia, but maybe my question is kind of long, but thank you.
Earth Genome is a nonprofit that is primarily grant funded at this point, and then also we work on a project or consulting basis for with specific projects in this building a data set of industrial agriculture sites around the world is an example of a new project that's for a group that is interested in doing point source greenhouse gas emissions monitoring. So that's us. What was the question? Oh, and yes, and I mean, we have done this reporting work, rainforest reporting work, and environmental impacts across the globe. And primarily we work with small newsrooms, largely through the Pulitzer Center and their fellowship program. But we have a number of journalists we worked with in Malaysia, and the Philippines, and Indonesia, like just to give some examples from Southeast Asia. But yeah, wherever there are the intersections of environmental problems that need investigating, which is global. And
I need to move on to other questions.
Yeah, we can talk afterwards.
Hi, I'm Beth Van Skok. I'm the U.S. Ambassador at Large for Global Criminal Justice, and I'm really interested in seeing machines to be trained to recognize certain munitions. Under international humanitarian law, some munitions are per se unlawful. Some are unlawful when applied in certain contexts, such as cluster munitions. And then we have our own civilian harm reduction guidelines that invite outsiders, including NGOs and journalists, to bring to our attention incidents in which U.S. provided weapons may be being used in unlawful or inappropriate or troublesome ways. And so often when it's a hot conflict situation, you need to have remote sensing to be able to follow what's happening, because it's obviously difficult to do on the ground in a very insecure environment. And so I'd be really interested in hearing more about, the prospects for training machines to recognize crater sizes or even fragments of munitions, and then be able to trace that back to an original source or a particular type of munition, which then could be uncovered to be, using one of our provided munitions, or where those munitions may have come from. Thanks.
So I get this question a lot in the context of journalism too. Journalists are interested in, conflict, working in conflict zones, and identifying, bomb impact craters, for instance, and understanding where, where and what are the specific, impacts of conflict. And I would be very interested to be able to support that kind of work. And I think it is possible technically, but there are some maybe commercial limitations at this point. So what I showed you, I think that this model, this foundation model kind of idea, which we're using, is an open source model built on open source imagery, which is relatively modest in its spatial resolution. To do the work that you're describing, you would want high resolution imagery, which is largely proprietary and controlled by private operators, and because of that, it also it makes it hard to get enough of that imagery to train like a kind of a foundation model that can do this kind of generalized work. But probably if there are some avenues in the future, and I think this will eventually happen. I'm sure the U.S. government, if any institution, would be the ones that would have the resources to make that happen if they wanted. But I think technically, in terms of the modeling and sort of strategy for use is kind of laid out there.
And we had a wonderful precedent exactly with the NICFI satellite program. It was a moment that there was a threat of governments not releasing data on deforestation, and we saw one government stepping up and say okay, we're gonna fund high resolution satellite imagery for journalists and activists, and here we are. Yeah. We used it a lot.
I could pile on that too, that we're doing some experiments with the Planet NICFI data as kind of like a next step towards that goal of being able to do higher resolution work.
Let's jump. Let's get one more from Peter, and then we wrap up this moment just briefly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you very much. So these were more like static targets now you were looking at, mining fields, and I guess it's relatively more easy to do with imagery data. Do you have any experience with moving targets, so to probably see container routes, or how smuggling is done, or how moving containers is done? Can satellite imagery help with finding these kind of elements of illegal activity?
There are folks that use satellite imagery to track global shipping, certainly. I think we have used it. I think this airfields work is maybe a good example where the imagery is sort of an entry point to further investigation, and so identifying some of these airfields became leads for the field work with the journalists, and sort of actually you visited some of these sites, corroborated the data from above, and came away with some understanding. I mean, even pictures of the small planes that were in this place, and and the reporting on this activity eventually led to some enforcement against these airstrips. So I think that pattern of sort of you can identify a locale with these remote techniques, but then you often want to go deeper and find more detail, and again, to go back to this idea of understanding craters in detail. You might find the crater location with a machine learning technique, but then you would want to like look with a human eye carefully, you know, and to understand like in more detail what was happening there, and then probably also bring other sources of data and you know, if possible, ground reporting to bear.
Thank you, Bert. Let's hear from Lily. Lily, besides being a good friend and also a Brazilian as myself, she works as a senior investigator for Global Witness. She was twice a Rainforest Investigations Network Fellow. Work many years, I don't remember how many years you worked on the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, which is an amazing outlet in the UK, partnering with standard major media outlets and publishing really impactful reports on food industry and other financial systems. So Lily has a long story in media in Brazil and outside of Brazil, and she will tell you more about the investigation she did about the beef supply chain and the collagen supply chain.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and I'm really happy to be here. And it's really difficult to speak after Maria and Edward because they're people that I look up to, and my work is not as sophisticated and cool. So anyway, bear with me. Can I get my slides, please?
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah, so as Gustavo was saying, I work now for Global Witness. This is a brand new job. And I've been an investigative journalist for 16 years, which makes me feel very old. But now at Global Witness, I'm leading this new initiative, which is called Forest Newsroom. So it's also a brand new initiative of the Forest team at Global Witness, which I'm very proud to be part of. We are creating this new unit that is going to try and publish quick turnaround stories on the role of financial institutions in funding deforestation around the world. We at Global Witness, we believe that if we want a world without deforestation and if we're fighting the climate crisis, we need to stop the money flow to companies that have destructive businesses. But before I joined Global Witness, as Gustavo said, I was a fellow with the Rainforest Investigations Network of the Pulitzer Center, and I was really privileged to work with the team of the Bureau of Investigative Journalism as well, looking into supply chains, food supply chains basically, that are globally connected. And I managed to uncover some cool things. So collagen is the investigation that I published last year, and collagen is a product obtained from bovine hides, other animal skins, but I focused on this specific type of collagen, which is like powder that you just mix up with your drink in the morning. It's a bit disgusting, honestly, but it's people drink it, so I will not judging, of course. I have some notes that I can't even read, so
Do you want to stand up?
Maybe I will just improvise. Bear with me. So this product specifically that I looked into is a Nestle. It's a Nestle-owned brand. It's called Vital Proteins, and the brand ambassador is Jennifer Aniston. She's still the brand ambassador, so not very much impactful story there. But anyway, so Jennifer Aniston, she's the brand ambassador, and when I was working on this story, I have a good friend. She's a huge Friends fan. And this was her reaction when I told her that I was ruining another person that she loved. Anyway, so I just want to talk a little bit about collaboration and how important it is for like journalists like me and Maria to partner up with experts, data scientists and experts like Edward and the good people that I partnered up with for this investigation. So as I was saying, I was working for the Bureau and I was working on another story about Nestle, and it was about beef. And then we were pulling out exports records from this amazing platform called Panjiva. So Panjiva basically collects the bill of ladings and export records of almost all goods that exist, so it's really cool. And Panjiva generates like spreadsheets that you can have fun with. So I was having fun with the spreadsheet, and we noticed, very unusual products that we haven't seen yet. So collagen, and it was like, what the hell's that? You know, I never thought about collagen before. It was not on my radar. I was mostly chasing cows. So so my team decided to investigate it after we spotted that. So we had no idea what this was about, what were the companies involved. We just knew that it was a bunch of collagen being exported out of Brazil. And the way that we worked this out was combining different strategies. So I'm talking about OSINT techniques. I'm talking about companies' records using different platforms from Sayari, which is a corporate information platform that with the Pulitzer Center, I had access to. So you can pull out documents, court records, investors, notes, and meeting notes, and all those things. OCCRP's Aleph, I can see there's a colleague here from OCCRP. So basically, trying to get as much information as we could about these companies' operations that we didn't know they were connected. I got this chart very nicely after the investigation. So before that, I didn't know any of that. So what I did know was how destructive the beef industry is. So it's the main driver of deforestation in the Amazon. And I just stole this chart from Greenpeace to kind of try and explain for those that are not familiar with this concept that's called cattle laundering. So basically, the land is deforested, and then illegal farmers, they just put some cattle on the ground, on the land. They raise the cattle, but the farm is considered illegal because there's illegal deforestation. So what they do is basically they truck the cows from another farm that has legitimate documents, and then from this farm that's legit, the cows are transported and sold to slaughterhouses so they can be slaughtered, and the records then clean. But this is a very complex supply chain. It's a very complex thing to track because the information is not 100% transparent, and it's difficult to access this information. So I was very lucky to be able to partner with this organization called the Center for Climate Crime Analysis. So they are an amazing group of scientists, data people. Data people is very bad of me saying that. Data people. But they're brilliant, they're amazing, and they helped to kind of extract the data from cattle transfer records, and they cross-referenced, for example, the gender of the cows, the age of the cows, the time when they were transported from one place to the other until it reached the slaughterhouse, to identify where the cows were coming from originally, where they were born, where they grew up. So you have the whole family history of the cows there, and it's quite cool. This is the document, Guia de Trânsito Animal, GTA. So this is the document where you get the information from. This is not like 100% public, so it's difficult to access, but they do a lot of data scraping, freedom of information requests, and combine different techniques to get access to these data. And then they put everything in this massive database, and they start cross-referencing the information about the cattle transfers with deforestation data, with, for example, the coordinates of the farms, the coordinates of indigenous territories, records of slave labor linked to the owners of the farms. So it's a lot of work, and it's like super sophisticated. Don't ask me how they did it, because I just asked them to do it. I wouldn't be able to do it. So I'm just using this example with the satellite imagery because I just want to show how bad it is. So in the middle of the picture, there's an indigenous territory, and you can see like it's in 2020, which is the latest of this data. You can see how it changes, like how much deforestation we are talking about. The indigenous territory is the only one in the center that's still preserved. So I wanted to big up what indigenous communities are doing in Brazil, because they are literally being the best forest guardians in the world, and we're not doing enough to grant them like their fundamental rights. can you just close your eyes a little bit, Edward, because I'm a bit embarrassed to show you this map after everything that you did. But this was me in a very unrefined way, using QGIS to overlap different layers and different shapefiles to try and showcase how all these big farms from these big farmers, they are just invading indigenous territories, and with actual evidence I could show this is very visual, and I needed to prove a point. I did not use that in the story because that wouldn't look really profesh. So I by myself in my small computer, I was just overlapping the shapes and doing the exercise of proving that there is this overlap, and indigenous lands are being invaded to make space for cattle, and all this is connected. So this is the brilliant spreadsheet that the Center for Climate Crime Analysis put together for me, and it's a lot of information put together. So we have farms, we have coordinates of the land registry, we have the names and the CPFs, which is IDs of the farmers, and then we can cross-reference the cattle transfers with that information of their IDs. We have indigenous territories mapped out, protected areas, conservation units, all that's in this beautiful spreadsheet that I spent so much time of my life in, and I love that now. So it wasn't enough to just get the data, because data is brilliant and it's amazing, but we needed to confirm the links between the companies on the ground. So we just combined this super cool data set with a reporting trip. And the data set was so important because this work guided us. So I was part of a team. I did not do this by myself, of course. But we decided on where to go, where to do the reporting based on the guidance that we got from the data. So I just want to emphasize how important it is to combine these two things, as Gustavo said 57 times before, but I'm saying it again. So we used all this data to guide our work. As I said, we combined all these different layers of information, and we visited some slaughterhouses, some tanneries where they transport the bovine hides to be treated and washed and everything, collagen factories, and we spoke to a bunch of truck drivers. And the truck drivers were key for this work because they were the ones that confirms everything that we thought it was true. So the links between the companies, the truck drivers was yeah, of course, I truck bovine hides from this place to this other place, and this is the company, but there's another one, and we got a lot of information doing some underground reporting, following trucks, and just talking to people. So it was really cool. The result was a cross-border investigation that was multimedia that we published with The Guardian in the UK and ITV at prime time, and it was one of the big broadcasters in the UK, with the Bureau of Investigative Journalism as well, in Brazil as well, with the largest media, online media in Brazil, UOL, and Joio Trigo, who partnered with us. So it was basically, after we published it, it was picked up by many different outlets, which was great. So we had this strategy of working with traditional media outlets, but we also wanted to deliver it in a way that people would care about it and people would engage. So I believed that many people did not know anything about collagen. I didn't know anything about collagen before that. So we wanted to kind of explain in a simple way, in a way that, for example, my family would read it or would get interested. My family don't read my stories. They just ignore everything what I do. So so my team put together this really cool video. So collagen is used by this influencers, wellness people in social media, and the ads are everywhere. So we hired an actress, and we asked her to pretend that she was an influencer, giving tips about wellness and beauty and health. So we put together this video that was on social media, to try and explain. I'll shut up now.
Collagen, collagen, collagen. The wonder product for skin, joints, and muscles. It might be good for your health, but what about the health of the planet? Like others, best-selling collagen brand Vital Protein sources grass-fed, pasture-raised bovine hide from Brazil. That means cow skins, by the way. Cows that eat grass. Their chief creative officer swears by it. But grass-fed doesn't mean sustainable, especially when talking about Brazil. The Bureau of Investigative Journalism dug into this murky industry and found vast deforestation and invasion of indigenous lands. Here comes the complex bit. Concentrate. Across Brazil, many indigenous people live in tropical forests and preserve these lush environments. But their land is under threat from farmers invading to deforest and raise cattle. Cows that eat grass. These cows get mixed up with ones from legit farms and sold to nearby abattoirs, many of which are owned by Brazil's biggest and controversial beef companies, JBS, Marfrig, and Minerva. Dead cow skins go to tanneries to de-hair and de-flesh, and then to collagen companies to turn into scoopable powder. But isn't it just a byproduct, you say? No, it's a big part of meat companies' income. So while being healthy is vital, so is the health of the planet.
Yeah, so the impact of the story was cool. Usually it's very depressing that we publish stories and nothing happens. But it was nice to see, for example, some of the clients of Nestle kind of pushing and asking, what are you going to do about it? And then Nestle sent a letter to one of the clients saying that we are committing to stop sourcing from the Amazon effective immediately. So this letter was like leaked to us. Nestle, to us, they just said, oh, we monitor our supply chains and we're great. Very like formal statement that didn't say anything, but apparently internally they are trying to change things, which is interesting. We'll have to keep watching to see if they're actually doing something about it, but for now, this is it. And there's a QR code to the methodology article that I wrote about this investigation, if you guys want to have a look. Thank you.
Thank you. As you can see, this is amazing work, and I think Lily is actually very humble about the impacts, because one of the things that we are most proud about the work that we're doing in this network is not about like, oh, you know, like people giving us the credit. It's actually people talking about these issues. So sometimes I'm talking with people and they say like, do you know that collagen? And I say like, yeah, actually no. So we make these topics part of the conversation, and this is, for me, it sounds like a real impact. Airstrips. You know, like people know, we saw the Minister of Brazil of the Environment, actually using the numbers that Ed has generated with that machine learning on an interview. Of course, not saying that, oh, that was created by Earth Genome and whatever. But she was using the data, so that's good enough. I think one very interesting thing that we heard from Lily is that in the case of the mining, you saw like we needed the tip from a journalist that know the ground to start generating the machine learning. But here we had these massive databases giving the journalist a tip to start an investigation. So we often get this chicken and egg questions like, do you start your story with the data, or the story starts you to find the data? So like, there's no answer for that, because it can be either way. Sometimes you find the data and you find the story. Sometimes you have the story and you need the data. And just for that, it's very important, again, in the context of this conference, to have these initiatives of more transparency. The governments, we can have Panjiva, which is this massive exports cluster of data, or Sayari, which is a very expensive platform that we are luckily have the resources to help journalists to have it, like bringing registry, corporate data from all over the world. But still, for that happen, we need more and more countries and governments and companies releasing the data, because then you can get that aggregated. So this is part of, I think, this conference, more transparency on releasing data. I think we have 5 minutes for some more questions and comments. Let's maybe focus on what Lily just presented, if possible, but I mean, any question is welcome.
Hi, my name is Dan O'Malley from the National Endowment for Democracy. I have two kind of quick questions. One is, what does the future of Earth observing satellites look like? We saw the chart that you shared, Edward. It's going up. What does that mean for the capabilities and future possibilities for this type of research? And then two, related to foundational models, like how much resources does that require and compute power? And then I guess the next question in my mind is, what does that mean from a sustainability perspective if it's a lot of compute power, and how does that, there's a lot we can do there, but the tax on the environment might be great.
Sorry. I mean, I think like to answer your first question, I tried to show kind of where we see, this work heading and sort of bringing, new technological capabilities to bear. And I think it like ties into the availability of satellite data, both from the creation of new satellites and also like open sourcing of data and making data available. Regarding the environmental impact, it's just like the models that we are working with, we haven't really had to wrestle with that yet because they're tiny compared to, say, like some of these large language models, like maybe millions of orders of like magnitude smaller or times smaller. But it's something that I was actually having in another conference last week, having discussions with some folks that are tracking like the electricity impact of machine learning in general. Super enlightening to me, and like just wild numbers, like maybe 10% of global energy consumption might be, or electricity consumption might be dedicated to AI by 2030, and it just like really eye-opening. But out of that, like we have some code we can borrow from those to at least begin to monitor, like the costs of our training and inference algorithms to at least, begin to track that. So.
More questions? Anyone?
Hello, good morning. I'm Diego from Transparency International. I work with open data. I'm sorry I got a bit delayed. I just wanted to ask, because I was delayed, I want to know how much do you rely on open data, especially for satellite imaging? And also a short question on the power of these companies like GBS or Minerva, and if you think this impacts the I would say when you publish, if it impacts the impact you have on the media, because I'm also from Brazil and I'm surprised to see this detail. Unfortunately I didn't find this before, so probably it's not in the mass media, but how do you think, if you think this has to do with the powerful interests involved on the topic? Maybe
Lily, you can get up.
Hi, thank you for your question. I think you're right. I think all these companies are very powerful, and the agribusiness in Brazil is a very powerful and very politically well-connected sector. I think there's definitely a lot of influence in the decision-making process about access to data. But I would say that what we can do, the impacts that we can have, is just keeping the pressure on these companies, and what we can do is like bring reputational risk, because for companies like Nestle or JBS or Marfrig and Minerva, they're powerful. They have access to funds and financing, and they're politically influential. So I think if we keep on publishing stories that would expose their bad business practices, I think that's the best approach. This is the power that we have, like as journalists. The power that we have is like just shedding light on problematic issues and trying to push for change.
And I can mention that we rely a lot on open data. Like Ed said, like we use a lot of Sentinel-2 data. I see the open data that we use in the network. That is key for us. And as I was saying, like for corporate data, more and more it's needed. It would be wonderful to get, for example, this animal transit guides just open. They're actually not open at this point.
Yeah.
We have 30 seconds, maybe one final question really quick, because we needed to wrap up. Really quick, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm Jiun Lee from Citizens Alliance for North Korean Human Rights. So my organization has documented the crimes against humanity committed by the North Korean government. And one of the major issues was the enslavement in the extract industry. So like we were, usually political prisoners were like those who are in the lower background, like they are like enslaved over generation in the extract industry. So we conducted investigation and then released a report like years ago, like how the political prison camp were used to produce the produce core, so that like we are using like satellite images to marking the major mining areas, and like how it was expanding over time. And I was wondering whether there's a possibility of using the machine like learning technologies to track it down like over time, like how much production is made over the sites, and like how the detention facilities and the village level is changing over time. So like I'd like to know about that part. And I also have other question to
we have
you.
to close with.
Yeah.
Really, we can talk later, just because.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, maybe we should talk afterwards. But just in general, if facilities are large enough, they are trackable by satellite imagery for sure, and you could use the tool like I showed to facilitate that.
Thank you so much for all these panelists, to Maria, Edward, Lily, and York. Thank you all for coming so early and for giving us so much of insight on your work and asking for the questions. I hope you like it, and please approach if you have any other questions. Thank you again. Thank you for the team.